Hello everyone, and welcome to the Solo Gamers Club. I'm Keith, and tonight we're diving into Navajo Wars, a solitaire-only historical board game from GMT Games. Before we begin, I want to thank everyone who participated in the poll on my community page. I listed 4 titles I was considering purchasing, and I asked which one interested the viewers the most. The choice was clear, and it's the game that we're going to be exploring tonight. As of late, it's becoming harder and harder for me to find new titles that genuinely excite me enough to purchase. And that's been true for a while now. So your input really does help guide what appears on this channel. In this board game, we're going to guide Navajo family groups, leaders, and cultural development from 1598 to 1864, navigating a world where outside powers push steadily into the American Southwest, into our ancestral lands. The game models Spanish incursions and missionary pressure, the turbulent Mexican era of raiding and trade, and finally the U.S. military campaigns that will culminate in Kit Carson's drive towards the infamous Long Walk. Our objective sounds simple, but it is anything but. We have to avoid subjugation by preserving both our culture and our capacity to resist the invaders. If either the culture or the military track ever drops to 0, the Navajo are overwhelmed and the game will end in defeat for us. Navajo Wars is known for one of the most respected solitaire AI systems that's been designed, making every decision tense and every playthrough unpredictable. For this video, I'll be playing scenario 14.1, Rise of the People, which unfolds during the first half of the Spanish period. To win, we must survive until card number 42, Franciscan Faction Ascendant, is drawn and resolved. At that point, we will be consulting a victory point table to determine how well we've endured. This is a look at the game board, and it really is a very, very beautiful game board. The designer has decided to use these polished stones to differentiate the different tracks on the game, and I think it really captures the feel of this period in the American Southwest. The game comes with a very well-written rules of play and a playbook which is going to contain our scenarios and some very interesting designer's notes. Now, this game is designed as a solo-only board game, although the designer has included a 2-player semi-cooperative variant. The game also comes with a trifold player's aid and a double-sided player's aid, and they're very well produced. A lot of professionalism in the design of this game. Also included is 2 decks of cards. We have a play deck and we have a culture deck. There's also some cubes, 3 dice, and a draw bag for the cubes. Now, this game has a very low counter density, which is very good. It allows you to concentrate more on the strategy than on the rules. The rules are actually quite simple, and this will allow us to fix ourselves more on the strategy of the game, and there's quite a bit here. We'll take a closer look at the game board and get familiar with the map and the different holding boxes. On the map, we have a total of 6 territories, and these represent regions of the 4 corners area of the United States, somewhere including New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Arizona. And this is where the action of the game is going to take place. Each territory, with the exception of Canyon de Chelly, is going to consist of 6 locations. So as an example, we have the San Juan Valley, and then the spaces are divided by number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you'll see that in each of the regions with the exception of the Canyon de Chelly. To the east of us, we have Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that's where our opponents are going to be coming from and attempting to invade our lands. Now, they're not just attempting to take over the lands, they want to change our culture as well, and we have to prevent that. Now, if we need a random location, each of these territories has a die symbol next to their track. And in this case, we have Shiprock, that's 1. San Juan Valley is 2. The Zuni Mountains are 3. We've got Monument Valley with 4. Hopi Land is 5. And finally, Black Mesa is 6. Now at the bottom of the board is our family holding boxes. We have families A through F along with our elder display. And this is where we're going to place our family members and resources for each family, A, B, C, D, E, F. We also have an out of play box, and we'll be keeping any counters that are in the game but are currently out of play in that area. Along the left side of the board, we have our general records track, and we're going to be able to use this track for multiple functions. Our number of actions, movement points, our current morale, etc. In the lower right-hand portion of the board is the enemy instructions area, and that's kind of the AI that is going to be driving this game. It's a very innovative system, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But this is where the enemy forces, their actions will be driven largely based on these tables here. Above that is 3 holding areas. We have the subjugation of New Mexico, raided cubes area, and a recovery area. In the upper right-hand corner, we also have an enemy out of play area, and that'll be similar to our out of play area. We'll keep the enemy forces that are currently not in play in that area. And finally, along the top of the board, we have an area for cultural development and historical event cards, and we'll store those cards as they are drawn in that area, and they'll remain there until they are removed by gameplay. We'll move on to the setup of the game, and we're going to be consulting our playbook, and in particular page 18, which is section 14, scenarios. And we're going to start by playing Rise of the People 14.1, and it reads, this scenario covers the history of the Dene from the arrival of the Spanish in 1598 until the mid-1700s. This scenario will take the player through the first half of the Spanish period of the game and is recommended for first-time players. This is the easiest scenario, so I think that's a good one for us to start with. Incidentally, the Navajo people actually refer to themselves as the Dene. So you'll hear me interchange between Navajo and the word Dene during the playthrough. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this game has a relatively low counter density, which is actually a welcome thing. We'll go over some of the counters that we will be using. In this case, we'll be looking at our family counters. As I said earlier, we had families designated by letter between A and F, and we placed those family counters in their family area. Now, on the counter, you'll see A in the middle that designates the family it's referring to. On the left-hand side of the counter is its escape modifier. In this case, it's +2. On the right-hand side with the red number, that is their ferocity level. The higher the ferocity, the more riled up they are, but as the ferocity rises, the ability to escape decreases. As an example, if we were to flip this counter over, when the ferocity becomes 1, the escape modifier drops to +1. Now for setup, we're going to place a man, woman, and child in families A, B, and C. And so we've placed a man, woman, and child in each of the 3 starting families, A, B, and C. Now we can place the family markers on the board, and we can do that with any ferocity level that we choose. Now we can place those family markers in any of the following territories that we choose. Either the area of Shiprock, which is dice roll 1. We could also place them in San Juan Valley, which is dice roll 2, or in the Canyon de Chile. And I think we're going to start out with family A, We're going to place them in Shiprock in space 2, and we're going to give them a ferocity level of 1. Ferocity levels can be anywhere between 0 and 3. Higher the ferocity, the worse our escape modifiers will be. I'm going to place family B in the San Juan Valley. We'll place him in region 2, and we'll give him a ferocity level of 0. And finally, for family C, we're going to place them in region 1 of the Canyon de Chelly, and we'll give him a starting ferocity of 0. For the next portion of setup, we'll turn to the Elder display. The Elder display is just that. It's going to display our tribal elders, and as the elders increase in wisdom and knowledge, the chances of them passing on increase, but their capabilities also increase with that wisdom. We're going to start out by placing 3 of these elders in the first 3 left-handmost boxes of the display. Next, we're going to get 2 draw cups, and in the first cup we're going to place our corn markers. Corn markers have a corn image on one side and a corn image with a number on the reverse side. When we plant corn and we harvest it, that will be the amount of food that corn is going to provide for our families. In the second draw cup, we're going to place all of our intruder tokens. Those will have a question mark on the front and some type of text or commodity on the other side. Now we're going to prepare our cultural development cards. In the game, we've got a total of 8 different categories of cultural development. Each category will have 3 levels involved with it, so each of these decks has 3 cards in them, levels 1, level 2, and level 3. The cultural developments include warrior society, horsemanship, sharp traders, masters of the mesas, weaving, wisdom of the ancient ones, cunning, and religion. Now, when we start the game, we're going to select one of these 8 categories, and we're going to take the level 1, level 2, and level 3 cards. I randomly chose to do this randomly. I took a D8, it came up to be a 2. So I'm going to take the horsemanship culture, and we'll place that off to the side. That includes a total of 3 cards, level 1, level 2, and level 3. Now we're instructed to take the level 1 cards of the remaining 7 culture groups, and we're supposed to shuffle those together. Now we're going to draw 3 cards from this deck, and these 3 cards will tell us which cultural developments will not be available during the game. These are going to go back in the box along with their level 2 and level 3 cards. So we've got Wisdom of the Ancient Ones. That's going to be going back into the box. Next one is Weaving. That will be going back into the box. And finally we have Warrior Society. That will be going back in the box. So this is going to leave us 5 sets of cultural development, including our starting set, and we will shuffle these and place them near the board. And now we're going to set up our general records track, and we begin with the Dene's military points. That's going to start at 5, so we'll place that in the 5 row. Now that military marker is probably the most important marker on this display. This marker represents our ability to resist the Spanish militarily. Next, we're going to place the enemy ferocity marker in box 4. Now, since we're going against the Spanish, we'll be using the yellow pieces with the Spanish flag on them. Then we'll place our cultural display marker on 9. That's the highest that it can go. That represents our preserving of our culture. As the Spanish start invading our lands, they're going to be moving that culture marker down, and we'll be losing part of our culture in the process. We can't let that happen. The Dene begin the game with 3 action points, so we'll place the action points marker on the 3 row. And finally, we have a slew of other markers, movement points, enemy battle dice roll modifiers, Dene battle dice roll modifiers, and family actions remaining. We'll place that in the 0 box for right now. And finally, we're going to place the enemy morale marker on the 5 spot. That's going to chart the morale of the Spanish forces in New Mexico. That is the Spanish equivalent to our military level. Now we get out our trade goods counters and our harass counters. We're going to set aside 6 trade good counters and 2 harass counters off to the side. They're neither in play nor available. They become available when a Weaving or Masters of the Mesas cultural development card is purchased. So that's going to leave us with 3 trade goods and 2 harass tokens. We'll place those in the out of play box. And these tokens are available for use in the game at this time. Next, we're going to set up our resources, and we're going to place all remaining population counters, animals, trade goods, harass counters, and firearms counters in the out of play box. So we place our remaining population counters. We have 5 men, 5 women, 5 children, and 3 elders, along with our sheep and horses and firearms, along with the trade goods and harass tokens that we placed earlier. Now the men of the tribes are responsible for the defense of the nation. The women are our cultural drivers, them teaching the children and preserving the Dene's culture. The children can grow up to be either men or women or elders, so they're the most universal tokens. And finally, we have our elders, and those are going to be driving the majority of our action points in the game. Now we're going to set up the enemy instruction display. We're going to be using 14 of these yellow Spanish instruction tokens. We put those in a cup, and we're going to randomize those, and we're going to draw out 2, and those 2 will not be a part of the game. So we'll remove 2 tokens from this cup, and we've removed H, build, subvert, and we've removed I, subvert. So that's going to go back into the game box. Now we're going to place all of the remaining tokens in alphabetical order. And we'll begin by filling the active column first. Alright, so we've placed, beginning with the active column, tiles A, B, C, D, E, and F in the active column. In the standby column, we have G, J, K, L, M, and N. Tiles H and I have been removed from the game. Now this display is going to give us a heads up as to what the Spanish strategy is going to be, particularly their active column. Now these tokens can be moved, will end up being moved around and possibly flipped over. But for the start of this, the Spanish will begin with subjugation. Build, subvert, raid, and subjugate. So there's a lot of subjugate going on in that active column. Next, we're going to place all of the mission outpost counters, enemy AP counters, and tribal raid counters in the enemy out of play box. I've also included the drought tokens in that area. Now we're going to collect our starting cultural development card, and we're able to freely collect 1 available level 1 culture development card and place it face up along the bottom edge of the map, signifying that its effects are now in play. I've decided to take horsemanship, and that is the level 1 horsemanship. Normally that costs a culture point to purchase, but this is our starting benefit. The benefit says, if player has 1 or more culture points, families with horse counter on their family box are given +1 movement point when they take actions. And now we're going to prepare our play deck. We're going to take all of the operations and ceremony cards, We're going to shuffle those together, and then we're going to deal out 2 piles of 8 cards each. So we've drawn out a total of 16 cards, and we've placed them into 2 piles of 8 cards each. In the first pile, we're going to place card number 41, Pueblo Revolt. Card numbers are listed at the lower left-hand corner of the card. In the second deck, we're going to place card number 42, Franciscan Faction Ascendant. And we're going to shuffle those cards into each of those stacks. And now we're going to take the stack with card number 41 in it, and we'll place that on top of the stack with the card number 42. And that is going to form our play deck for the game. And now we're going to prepare our raid pool. And we're going to do that by getting out the black bag, and we're going to fill that with the following colors of cubes. We'll place in the bag 3 black, 3 brown, 3 red, 3 white, 2 yellow, and 1 green cube, and that's going to form our raid pool. The other cubes will be placed back in the box. They won't be needed. And so that completes the setup of the game. Now we're going to take a look at the victory conditions. If the game does not end in defeat beforehand, we're going to determine victory or defeat after card number 42, Franciscan Faction Ascendant, is drawn and resolved. For each black cube that is in the Subjugation of New Mexico box, we'll be adding +1 to enemy morale. Next, we will subtract the number of enemy morale from military points and compare the difference on the table below. So the higher the difference, the better that we are going to do on our victory level. If we can get 3 or higher, we'll have a major victory, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, what makes this game very easy to play is it is very procedural. We have a very simple sequence of play. It says Navajo Wars follows a sequence of play that revolves around a single deck of cards. The sequence of play contains a card phase and a discard phase and varies depending upon the card drawn. Repeat the sequence until defeated or the scenario or campaign is completed. Now, if we look at the map board, each region has a certain amount of victory points that it's going to provide for us, provided that we have a family, at least one family in that region. As an example, we have the San Juan Valley that's worth 3 victory points. Shiprock is worth 4, Zuni Mountains 3. As we proceed farther west, the victory points of those regions get a little less. We've got 2 victory points for Monument Valley, 1 victory point for Black Mesa, and 2 victory points for Hopi Land. So what we're going to try to do is amass the most victory points that we can, and that will be offset by the enemy morale. So we want to make sure that we push the enemy morale down, at the same time gaining us the maximum amount of victory points. We'll take a look at the sequence of play. I'll bring up the sequence of play chart that is located on the back of the rule book. And examining that, we find out that there's basically only a few steps. We've got our card draw phase, followed by a card resolution phase, and finishing with a discard phase. So I think the best way to teach this game is just to start playing, and we're going to begin with 2.1, the card draw phase. We'll draw 1 card from the top of the deck and reveal it face up.
I am a daughter of the Dene, born where the red earth meets the wide sky. Our stories, our songs, our sheep, our sacred mountains, these are the threads that hold our world together. But now the strangers ride in with metal skins and sharp tongues, insisting that their God must replace our own, and that their ways must replace our ways. They take. They demand. They press us to forget who we are. They do not understand. We are rooted deeper than their crosses can reach. We carry our ancestors in every step, inside every prayer, and within every whispered teaching that we pass on to our children. We may bend, but we do not break. We remember. And because we remember, we endure.
Okay, we're going to begin the game by drawing our first card from the play deck. And what we're going to have to be cognitive of is that in the first 9 cards, there is one historical card. In the second 9, we have another historical card. When that comes up, that is going to be a victory check at that point. So we have to prepare ourselves for that. The first card has a victory point level of 8. Well, currently on the board right now, we're in control of the San Juan Valley and Shiprock. That's a total of 7 victory points. So if this card was to be drawn in the first draw, we would not meet that criteria. Our first card is Ceremony. Now when these cards are drawn, we're going to follow the instructions on them from top to bottom. And this says, when drawn, conduct the following steps. Step 1. Conduct enemy way effect on all ceremony cards in the player's hand, and then reset the cubes. Well, we don't have any cards in our hand, so step 1 does not have to be resolved. Also, there are no cubes in any of the boxes. Step 2, we can discard the card, or we can do step 3. Step 3 is to add a child population counter to the passage of time box. And then we would add the card in hand. Now, the risk involved is if we draw another ceremony card before we can use this card for its effect, we'll have to undergo the enemy way effects on this. So it's a bit of a risk, but I think we're going to keep the card. So it says here, we're going to add a child population counter to the passage of time box. So we'll put a child in that passage of time box. The children are the most flexible of our population counters. Now what this card can do is, if we've got this in our hand, we can use the effect at the bottom. And in this case, it allows us to change any die roll that we make to a value of 1, which in some cases is quite helpful. But again, it comes at the cost of, if we were to draw another ceremony card, every ceremony card in our hand, the enemy way effect is going to kick off. And in this case, it's to remove 1 man from play. Remove from family box if possible. Player may discard this card. If discarded, remove 1 child from the passage of time if possible. All right. Our next card is an operations card. And once again, we're going to go through each of the steps from top to bottom. We begin with the operations segment. It says player may preempt for 2 action points. Enemy collects 2 action points if player preempts. Otherwise, it's 3. So that will be our decision to make. Now, it's always a good idea to check the major and minor events on the card in the operations segment to see what other things might be coming up with the play of this card. And that might help us determine whether we should take that action in the operations segment and preempt the Spanish. The major event that will be coming is Pueblo War in the West. We're going to roll a die, and on a 1 to 4, War in the Zuni Mountains will occur. And on a 5 or 6, War in the Hopi lands will occur. When war happens, we're going to lose one of our families that are located in that location listed. So we know what is going to be happening. And then our minor event is roll to see which instructions swap place. And we'll show you that when that occurs. In trying to decide whether to preempt the Spanish or not, we should be checking the active instructions for the enemy. In this case, they have subjugate and they have subjugate. And the numbers listed on those are 1 and 2. So if we choose not to preempt, the enemy is going to have 3 action points, and that will allow him to do that subjugate action twice. If we preempt him, he will only have 2 action points, and that would only allow him to do the first one. So we will definitely be preempting the Spanish. So we're going to pay the 2 action points listed on the card. That'll move us from 3 down to 1. And now we have the initiative, and we'll be going first. Now, before we decide on what actions we're going to take, we should probably check out the enemy instruction summary. That's Rules 4.2. We know that the enemy is going to have sufficient action points to activate that subjugate 1 token on their active display. So let's find out what subjugate means. And if we go down the list, we find subjugate, and it says spend APs per instruction counter. For each AP spent, draw 1 cube from the raid pool. That's from the bag. Once all cubes have been drawn and examined, place any red cubes drawn into the subjugation of New Mexico box and place all non-red cubes in the recovery box. If any cube placed in the subjugation of New Mexico box, see subjugation of New Mexico chart. Okay. Now, during the Dene operations segment, the player must first select and then execute one of the following 3 operations. We have planning, take actions, or passage of time. And we're going to begin with take actions. And the families will use movement points to take a variety of actions, including moving, raiding, planting, harvesting, tribal council, and trading with a fort. The number of families that can be activated to take actions is equal to the number of elders on the elder display, plus either the number of family counters in the Canyon de Chelly territory, or 1, whichever is highest. So in this case, we have 3 elders on our elder display. That's going to give us the ability to activate 3 families. We also get a bonus for however many families we have in the Canyon de Chelly. And we have 1 there. So we could activate a total of 4 families. We only have 3 on the board at the moment, so all families can activate. And I think I'm going to begin with family A. When our families activate, they begin with 6 movement points, minus 1 for each empty population space on its family box. So we're going to activate population A, or family A, I should say. So that's going to give us 6 movement points. We'll mark our movement points up to 6 for that family. So we're going to consult the Take Actions summary on the trifold. And that says families equal the number of elders plus the higher value, 1, or the number of families in Canyon de Chelly may be activated. So we've determined that's 4. So we can activate all of our families. Then each activated family will get its 6 movement points minus 1 for each empty population space on its family box. So in the case of family A, we have a man, woman, and child there. So we're going to consult that table and see the different actions that we have available to us. And I believe our best action would probably be to raid New Mexico. And it's going to cost us movement points to move from our current location to Santa Fe to conduct the raid. The prerequisite is that we have at least a man in the family, which we do. And we're not going to actually move our family on the board. When we conduct a raid, we count the number of movement points from our current position to the location that we're going to raid. In this case, we're trying to get to Santa Fe to raid the Spanish. It cost us 2 movement points, 1 and 2. So we reduce our movement points on the track from 6 down to 4, and then we conduct the raid. Now to resolve the raid, we're going to get our bag of tokens and we're going to draw 1 of them. And the color is going to determine what the success or failure of the raid is. So here is our draw from the bag. And we've drawn a black cube. All right. So checking the raid table. And we're going to look under the cube drawn, which is black. And in this case, we're raiding New Mexico. So we'll be using the first column. And it says animals stolen. Place either 1 horse or 1 sheep counter in the resources box. Family ferocity will be +1. Place the cube in the raided cubes box. Okay. So that cube gives us a choice between sheep or horses. The sheep will help us feed our families. The horses will give us more mobility. And I think in this case, I'm going to select the horses. So we're going to place one horse token into our resources area. And we can assign those horses to any of our 3 families that we choose. Then that black cube goes into the rated cubes area. And that is going to, the more cubes that we get in there, the more disruption that we're causing to the Spanish in New Mexico. So these raids not only give us resources, but it causes consternation with the Spanish. Now we have 4 movement points remaining, so I'm going to launch another raid into Santa Fe. We're going to pay another 2 movement points, moving us from 4 down to 2, and we're going to make another draw from the bag. See if we can get some more resources. What we don't want is a red cube. Okay, here's the draw, and we've got another black cube. That is great. And in this case, I think we're going to take a sheep. We'll take one of the sheep tokens and place that in our resources area. So we've done pretty well so far. Now, when we conducted that first raid, that raised our ferocity level of that family by 1. So we have to raise our ferocity from 1 up to 2. So we take our 2 value counter from our display and replace that with a 2 value ferocity. You'll note that our escape ability has been reduced from +1 to 0 by doing so. Now we have to do that again because we just conducted another raid. And we'll have to flip that counter to its maximum, and that is 3. So we have a -1 right now in our evasion ability. The black cube that we drew is going to go into the rated cubes box, further reducing enemy action points that will be coming during the turn. So those are good things. Now our family still has 2 movement points available, so we could try a 3rd raid against Santa Fe if we choose, or we could take another action, and one of those actions is to actually move the family. Now you'll notice that on the board there are these standard values, and then there is a value in parentheses, and that's the movement cost. If we have horses, is the value in the parentheses. So if we were to use our horses, we'd be able to move from our current location into this adjacent location at a cost of 1 movement point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the horses resource that we have in our resources box, and I'm going to apply that to family A. We can use those resources at any time. And so I'm going to assign our horses to family A. So now that family A has horses, we can pay the movement cost in parentheses. So we're going to move them from the 2 box to the 3 box, and that's going to cost us 1 movement point. We still have 1 movement point remaining, but I think we are going to just forego that point, and that will be the end of the actions for family A. Each family can activate once per turn, so family A is done with their activations. Now we have to keep in mind, now we've already drawn 2 cards out of the deck. That first 9 cards, there's going to be one of those historical cards in there. So that is definitely going to be coming up. So we have to prepare for that. As it stands now, we have a total of 4 and 3, 7 victory points. Well, that card is going to mandate that we have 8 victory points minimum. So we need to pick up a victory point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate family C. They're currently in Canyon de Chile. And you'll notice that these are dashed lines. And to move out of Canyon de Chile costs all of our movement points. It's a very remote location. Now when we leave the Canyon de Chile, we pay all of our movement points, but we can move to any space on the board that we choose. Now we know that there's going to be a Pueblo War in the west. That's going to be occurring in either the Zuni Mountains or in Hopi land, so we don't want to go there. But what we can do is move to Monument Valley. That is worth 2 victory points. So we're going to spend all 6 of the movement points that are available for family C. We'll move them from 6 down to 0, and we're going to move them into, I think, the 2 space of the Monument Valley track. That's going to get us 2 victory points. So we've already activated families A and C. That leaves us with family B. We'll give them 6 movement points. Now we can decide what we want to do with family B. Now for family B, we have a couple of options. One of them would be to conduct a long-range raid on New Mexico. Instead of counting out the amount of points it would cost to reach Santa Fe, we can spend all of our points and conduct one long-range raid. If we do that, we cannot spend any movement points for any other action. All of the points would be spent in that long-range raid. Another option we have is to plant corn. Movement point cost for planting corn in our location would be the family's area plus 2. So we're currently in location 2 of the San Juan Valley. That would cost us all 6 points, but we'd be able to plant corn there, and that would help us when it comes time to feed our families. And I think that's what we're going to do. So we're going to spend all 6 of our movement points for family B, and we're going to plant corn. So what we do there is we're going to take our corn cup, and we're going to randomly draw a corn token from there. And that'll have a value on the back of it of between 1 and 3 points, and that's the amount of food that that corn will provide us if we harvest it. So here is the random draw, and we place that with the corn side face up. We don't know the value yet because we haven't grown it. And that's going to cover all of our actions for our families. We'll continue back with the operations card. And now it's time for enemy operations. During the operations segment, we preempted the Spanish. So we went first, and with that effect, the enemy is going to collect only 2 APs this turn rather than 3. Our first step in enemy operations is step 1, special enemy instruction conditions. We'll check for the following 2 conditions, skipping conditions that don't apply. Condition 1 is if a peace instruction counter is in the rated cubes box. We would resolve a peace instruction instead. Condition 2, if a defend instruction is in the rated cubes box, we would then resolve a defend instruction. Well, neither of those cases are true at this point. So now the enemy is going to collect their APs. They're going to collect the APs that are listed on the card. And in this case, the card instructed us that we have 2 APs. However, that will be modified by the number of red cubes in the subjugation of New Mexico box and modified by the number of rated cubes in the rated cubes box. So at present, the enemy has 2 AP, and we give them 2 of these AP counters. We can also track this on the chart like we do our movement points, but I like using these AP counters. So right now, the enemy has 2 action points per the operations card that we're using. We would modify that number of APs if there were cubes, red cubes, in the subjugation of New Mexico box. There are not. So then we look at the rated cubes, and it says on here, -1 enemy AP per cube. So the enemy would lose 2 AP because of the raids that we conducted, and we've destabilized the Spanish in Santa Fe. However, the enemy will always have at least 1 AP. So even though we've got the 2 cubes here, that will move them down to 1 AP, and they can spend that according to the schedule on the enemy instructions table. So at present, the enemy has 1 AP. Now we're going to move on to step 3 of enemy operations, and that's flip random instructions. And this is the beauty of the game. We don't know what active instructions truly are going to be available until after this step, because it's possible that some of these enemy strategies might be moved around, and we don't really know. Right now, the enemy is going to be resolving a subjugate action, but we don't know what will happen. So what we have to do here is we're going to roll 2 dice, and we'll see what the effects of this are on the active instructions. Now, if the result of this roll is doubles, and there is an enemy instruction counter in both the active and standby columns, we're going to swap those counters. So as an example, if we rolled double 3, we would swap this build action with the Utes action. They would switch. And that changes what their activities will be. If both dice are not equal, for each die roll result, we're going to flip the enemy instruction counter on the corresponding row of the active column, which does not have a stripe across the bottom. So these tokens that you see with the red stripe on them, they will not be flipped as a part of that action. It will be just dismissed. So we'll make the roll and see what the results are. We've got a 5 and a 3. Okay, so we're going to look at results 5 and 3, and those tokens will flip to their opposite sides. So starting with the 3, it'll go from a build to a colonize activity. Number 5 is a raid. That will flip to a expand action. All right. So you can see how we're never quite sure exactly what the enemy is going to be doing with their action points. They're going to resolve them from top to bottom, and the cost of that action is whatever the number is in on that tile. If they don't have sufficient number of AP, they will store those instead. So with that step completed, now we move on to step 4, and that's where the enemy is going to exercise his actions. We begin with the active column and we attempt to use their APs to activate those actions. So we have 1 AP, that is the cost of this subjugate action. So what we will do there is we have sufficient AP to do it, so that token will be moved to the inactive box. The AP is removed back to the supply, and now we look in the instructions and find out what a subjugate action is. And checking the enemy instruction summary, we look under subjugate, and it says spend APs per instruction counter. For each AP spent, draw a cube from the raid pool. Once all the cubes have been drawn, examine them. Place any red cubes drawn in the subjugation of New Mexico box. Place all non-red cubes in the recovery box. So that's what we'll do. And in this case, we're going to be doing that subjugate action once. So we'll be drawing 1 token from the bag. And the cube we've got is a white. All right, so that is going to go into the recovery box on our display. So we will move that white cube to recovery. So we place the white cube in the recovery box. That wasn't too bad. Now the Spanish have used all of their APs, so they have no activation points remaining. So we're going to move on to step 5 of the enemy operations segment, and that's going to be to reset the enemy instruction display. What will happen here is the tokens in the active column will all slide up as far as they can go, and the tokens from the inactive will slide all the way down and be placed in the open slots available. So right now you can see how these enemy actions are going to be cycling themselves. It's almost like a machine to some extent, where we're going to have that active display and inactive display cycling each other. So next turn we're going to be looking at a 2-value subjugate and possibly a 3-value colonize. But we don't know what those tokens will be until they actually take their actions. So now with the enemy actions completed, we move on to our major event segment, and we're going to read the text on the card. And it says Pueblo War in the West. And we would roll a die. On a 1 to 4, it's going to be a war in the Zuni Mountains. On a 5 to 6, it would be a war in Hopi lands. Select family in war territory. Use alphabetical priority. If family not stacked with a fort, remove all counters from the family's box to the passage of time box. If no family in the territory, -1 culture. All right, so we would make the roll and determine which of those locations are going to have that Pueblo War in the West. The result is a 1. So that is indicating that it's going to occur in the Zuni Mountains. Well, fortunately for us, we have no families in the Zuni Mountains, so we're not going to take any loss there other than if no family in territory, -1 culture. So we're going to lose a culture point due to that Pueblo War in the west. So we move our culture marker from 9 down to 8. So with the major event segment complete, we move to the minor event segment. It says roll to see which instructions swap places. All right. So to resolve this minor event, we're going to consult the enemy instructions table. We're going to roll a single die, and we're going to check the roll corresponding to the die roll. And if it has counters on both standby and active columns, the instruction counters will swap places. So here is the roll. We've got a 3, so we check row 3, and these counters are going to swap. So the subvert counter will move into the standby, and the Utes counter will move into the active. And that's how you can see now how this enemy strategy is constantly changing. Our scouts can kind of see what is happening, but they don't truly know what the action is until it is taken. And the last part of the card is the discard phase. And what we would do there is, if one or more family counters are in the same area as a fort, we would roll a die. Well, there's no forts unless we're playing against the U.S. forces. But if we did, we would roll a die, and if the number is equal to or less than the number of families in the same area as the fort, the player would lose a culture or military point. Then we would check for automatic victory, and if that applied, we would make the decision for automatic victory. And then, unless placed face up along the top edge of the map sheet as a reminder for persistent effects, we would discard the current card. So that's what will happen. We're going to discard this operations card, and we will move on to a new turn. So we'll move on to the next turn, and we'll draw our next card from the play deck. And we've got another operations card. All right. The operations card says player may preempt for 3 APs. Enemy collects 2 APs if the player preempts, otherwise 4 APs. Well, we only have 1 AP in our stockpile, so we won't be able to preempt them with this card, meaning that the Spanish are going to have the initiative, and they will have 4 action points to start. So we'll get out 4 enemy action point tokens, and then we'll go through the procedure for the enemies. Now, currently we have no cubes in the Subjugation of New Mexico box, but we do have 2 in the raided area. So they're going to lose 2 APs because of those raids that we conducted, disrupting their operations. So they have 2 action points, and we'll place those in the enemy action points available box. We'll go on to step 3, and that's going to be the flipping of the instructions. Here's our dice roll. We've got a 1 and a 5. All right, so we'll examine rows 1 and 5. Well, row 1 has a red stripe on it, so that cannot be flipped. Same goes for result 5. The subjugate action cannot be flipped, so we just disregard those rolls. So now the enemy is going to use their action points, starting with the top token on the active display. And if they have sufficient number, they will execute that action. And they do. They have 2 action points, and that's enough to pay for Subjugate 2 action. So the enemy is going to be doing that Subjugate action twice, mandating us to draw 2 cubes from the bag. Here's the first draw. The first one is a brown cube. It's not red, so it goes into the recovery area. We'll draw our next one. And this one is a yellow. Once again, not red. It will go into the recovery area. So that was pretty lucky for us. By odds, the Spanish should have drawn one of those red cubes. So we got fortunate. So now we're going to reset our enemy instructions. These are going to all move up, and subjugate will move to the bottom. So we're looking at a colonize, a Utes action, and an expand in the upper portion of that active display. These enemy action points have been spent. They'll go back into the supply. So now that we've completed the enemy actions, it's our turn. We're going to have to decide on what type of operation we're going to undertake, either planning, taking actions, or passage of time. Now, a planning action is where we can acquire action points. That's how we can recover action points. We're utilizing our elders, and we're able to accumulate action points that we can spend for various actions. The other operation is passage of time, and that is where, just like it says, this would simulate the passage of time. We would be utilizing the family members that we have in the passage of time box, and if there are enough of them there, we can start creating new families on the board. But at present, we've only got the one child there, so that isn't enough there to justify a passage of time action. So our choices would either be planning or take actions. And I think, considering the situation, we're going to continue with taking actions. And we're going to activate Family B in the San Juan Valley. So we're going to activate Family B. That's going to give them 6 movement points. And we can start spending those movement points for various actions. I think for the first action for Family B is we're going to try to harvest that corn. So we'll look under the harvest corn action. It says the movement point cost will be the value of the family's area plus 4. So in this case, it'll be 2 plus 4 is 6. That'll be all of our movement points for Family B. And we're going to harvest that corn token that's there. So to harvest the corn, we would check to see if there are any drought tokens in our current region. San Juan Valley, there are no drought tokens there. So since there are no drought tokens, we simply flip the token and place it into our resources. And this is, well, it's a value of 1. So that's the lowest value we have, but it is at least a food source for us. And we'll place that in the resources area. That'll complete the actions for Family B. Let's move on to Family C in the Monument Valley area. Now, Family C has a few options. They could plant corn in their current location. They could hold a tribal council. And that's a way that we can gain action points other than as being a part of a planning action. The other option would be to conduct a long-range raid on New Mexico. That would cost us all of our movement points, but we would be able to raid Santa Fe. The problem is we've drawn already a total of 5 cubes out of the bag, and no reds have been drawn, so it's probably not a good option for us to raid Santa Fe at this point. So I think Family C is going to use their movement points, and we're going to attempt a tribal council. That'll cost us all of our movement points, and we will roll a die. If the die roll is equal to or greater than the value of the family's current area, we will collect an AP. So we'll spend all of their movement points. Their current area is 2. So our current area is 2. So if we can roll a 2 or higher, we're going to gain an action point. Here's the roll. Roll a 6. So we gain an action point. We'll move our action points from 1 up to 2. That will finish Family C's activations. We'll move to Family A. We'll give Family A 6 movement points, and we'll see what type of actions they want to take. Now you'll remember that our culture card that we started with at the beginning of the game was horsemanship. The benefit says if the player has 1 or more culture points, families with horse counter on their family box are given +1 movement point when they take actions. Well, earlier we assigned horses to family A, so that's going to give them an extra movement point. We'll move them up to 7 movement points for this turn. And I think family A is going to hold a tribal council. I don't want to raid Santa Fe at this point because we've already drawn out 5 cubes out of the bag with no reds, so there's going to be a very good chance that we'll be drawing a red cube out of the bag. So we don't want to necessarily do a tribal a raid on Santa Fe at this time. So I'm going to attempt a tribal council. We're in location 3, so if we can roll a 3 or greater, we will be successful. Results of 5, so that is good, and we'll gain another action point, moving us up from 2 up to 3. That's going to complete all of our actions for our families, and we'll move on now to our major event segment. Now the major event segment says trappers and traders. We're going to roll a die to determine the territory where an intruder counter will be placed. Then we'll roll a second die and place the intruder counter face down in the area with the value equal to the roll. All right, so we will make a die roll and see which region we're going to be in first. Result is a 2. And checking the game board, we find out that region 2 is the San Juan Valley. San Juan Valley has a die symbol of 2, so it will be placed within that region. We're going to roll another die now, and we will place the token in that individual space on the track. Here's the roll. And we've rolled a 3. So we're going to place that intruder token in space number 3, which is going to be here. So we take our intruder cup and we give that a shuffle, and we're going to draw one of those and place it face up on that space. And we place the intruder token accordingly. We don't know what that is. We'll move on now to our minor event segment. That says to reset the cubes. When we're told to reset cubes, we're going to return all cubes in the recovery box to the raid pool. So that's actually a good thing for us. We're going to be putting these 3 cubes from the recovery area back into the bag. Next, we're going to shift all cubes from the raided cubes box to the recovery box. That's not good, because we were getting -1 enemy action points per cube there. So we don't necessarily like that part of it, but we've placed 3 valid cubes back into the draw, which is great. And then finally we go to the next step, which is the discard phase. So that card will be discarded and we'll be ready for our next card draw. We'll draw our next card, and that is revealed to be an operations card. That says, player may preempt for 3 action points. The enemy would collect 2 action points if the player preempts. Otherwise, he'll get 4. Well, we have 3 action points, so we definitely could preempt the enemy in this case. And that would limit him to 2 action points. And I think we will do that. We're going to spend 3 action points, removing us down to 0. And we're going to take the initiative, and we will commence our actions first. So we have the initiative, and we'll have to select one of the 3 operations to take. And I think we're going to try a planning operation. That'll be something new that we haven't seen yet. The first step of a planning operation is step 1. The player places a population counter matching the population symbol on the corner of the operations card being resolved, and we place that in the passage of time box. In this case, we're going to select a woman, and we'll place a woman in the passage of time box. So we'll take a woman from the out of play box and place that in the passage of time area. What we're trying to do here is to build enough people, men, women, and children, in that passage of time box, so when we take the passage of time operation, we'll be able to use those counters to build new families. And to construct families, we need to have man, woman, and child. Step 2 is we're going to collect 1 Dene AP for each elder that we've got on the display. And then we're going to be advancing the elders 1 box to the right. That represents them aging. So we have a total of 3 elders here, and that's going to get us 3 action points. We'll move our action points from 0 up to 3, and then we will advance our elders 1 box. Now, as the elders age, the chances of them passing away are increased. And that's reflected in the numbers below the box. If a number falls in the range of those numbers, that elder dies. And now in step 3, we take our elder actions. We can select an elder on the display and declare an elder action. And those are free actions. There are 4 different elder actions available. First action is if culture points are greater than military points. We can reduce the culture point by 1 and increase military by 1. Technically, that is true right now. Our culture points are at 8 and our military points are at 7, so we could take that action. Another one is if military points is greater than culture points, we can reduce the military by 1 and increase culture by 1. That one won't be available to us because culture is greater than military. Another action is to reduce or increase one family's ferocity by 1. A family without a man counter cannot have a ferocity greater than 0 at any time. If the ferocity increased and military points is less than 5, then also add a military point. If ferocity is decreased and the culture points are less than 5, add a culture point. A family's ferocity may only be impacted once by elders during the resolution of a single card. Another possible action is to add an action point to our action point track. Now, in order for an elder action to be successful, the die roll has to be within the range indicated for that elder. As the elders get older, they get more capable, but it also will accelerate their chances to pass away. And I think we're going to use our most senior elder. He has a success range of 1 to 2. And we're going to have him attempt to swap our military points and our culture points. So we're going to make a roll and see if he is successful in doing that. He rolls a 2, and that is within his success range, so we're able to do it. So we're going to lower our culture points by 1 and increase our military points by 1. The military points are probably the most important category on the display. Our next elder that we're going to use will be this second elder with a range of 1 to 2, and we're going to have him attempt to adjust the ferocity of one family. We've got family A at a ferocity level of 3, and I'd like to lower that. So we will attempt to have that elder lower the ferocity of family A. Here's the roll. And we rolled a 3, so we were unsuccessful in that attempt. And I think for our final elder, he's less experienced. He's only going to succeed on a roll of 1, but we'll have him attempt to gain an action point. So we'll make the roll. Results of 4, so he's failed. Step 4 of the planning segment is if the culture points are greater than 0, each family with a woman may spend an AP to place 1 trade goods counter into the resources box. Well, we've got 3 families. Each of them have a woman counter in them, so we could technically do this 3 times. And resources are very valuable in the game. It gives us some good advantages. And this would represent the women of the families creating trade goods, different types of cloth, etc. And I think we're going to have the woman in family A create some trade goods. So we're going to spend 1 action point, moving us from 3 down to 2, and we're going to add a trade goods counter. one of these trade goods counters, and we'll add that into our resources area. And we'll place that trade goods counter in the resources area. That's great. Now, step 5 of the planning segment is each family with a man can spend an action point to conduct tribal warfare or tribal diplomacy. Now, so during this step, we can target one of the instruction counters that are labeled either Ute or Comanche in an attempt to change them from being aggressive against us to possibly passive. And I don't think we're going to conduct any diplomacy or tribal warfare at this time, so we'll move on to step 6 and we're going to reset our cubes. And this was part of the reason I selected the planning operation. That will allow us to put those 2 black cubes from the recovery area back into the draw bag, which is what we want. We want to have more of those colored cubes in there, so the chances of us rolling or drawing a red cube are diminished. So now it is the enemy operations portion, and we'll begin by having them collect their APs. Because we preempted them, the enemy is only going to gain 2 APs this turn. That would be modified by +1 for each red cube in subjugation and -1 if we had any in the raided cubes. We don't. So he has 2 AP available. We'll go on to step 3 and we're going to flip random instructions. So we're going to roll the 2 dice and consult our instruction table. Okay, we've got a 3 and a 4. So we will look at those results and see what will happen. Well, the 3 result is going to flip the expand back to raid. So that wasn't good for us. The 4 result involves a red striped token, so that will not be flipped. We'll move on to step 4, and that's execute enemy instructions. Well, the first instruction is colonize. That has a cost of 3. The enemy only has 2 AP. So he is going to keep those APs in reserve, and he will not be able to execute the colonize action. So that will put an end to his turn. So we'll move on now to the major events segment. It says trappers and traders. We're going to roll a die to determine the territory where an intruder counter will be placed. All right, so that'll be just what we completed the last time. So we'll make a roll and find out what region the trappers and traders are going in. The results of 5, and a 5 is going to be the Hopi land. So we'll make another die roll in Hopi land, which was area 5, and now we will see the individual location where the intruders are going. Results of 2, so we'll be placing an intruder token in space 2. We'll get our intruder cup, and we will draw one randomly from the cup. Most of these intruder tokens are good for us, but there are some that are not good. Okay, here's the token, and we'll place the intruder token in the indicated space. Now when we move into the space, we can reveal that intruder token. And we'll move on now to the minor events segment, and that says to roll to see which instructions will swap. Okay. And here's the dice roll. We've got a 5, so result 5 is going to swap the subjugate and the slaves tokens. Those will swap. We'll move on to the discard phase. We will discard the current card, and we will draw another card. Now, obviously, what I'm concerned about is I have this ceremony card that is in our hand. And if another ceremony card is drawn, the enemy way portion of that card is going to be enacted. And the enemy way portion of the card is remove a man from play. Remove from family box if possible. Player may discard this card. If discarded, remove one child from the passage of time if possible. So that's always an option for us, is to remove the card in that manner. But I was trying to find a way to play the card for that die value of 1, which it says here, For our blessed way, discard this card in lieu of making a die roll during a battle, evasion, or at any time during player operation segment. The die roll is automatically a 1. So I guess what I should have done is use that when we were conducting our elder actions. When I failed the elder action roll for that second elder, we could have played this card in lieu of that and substituted a die roll of 1 for that. That's probably what I should have done. We'll draw our next card, and this time we do have a ceremony card, and that's unfortunate. And that says, when drawn, conduct the following steps. Step 1, conduct enemy way effect on all ceremony cards in the player's hand and then reset the cubes. So we're going to have to enact the enemy way for the card in our hand. It says remove a man from play. Remove from a family box if possible. Player may discard this card. If discarded, remove one child from the passage of time if possible. So we're forced to remove a man from play, and we have to remove it from a family box if possible. Well, I'm going to remove the man from family C, and he is out of play. So I made a grave oversight by not using this card when we had the opportunity during the elder actions. It does say here that the player may discard this card. If discarded, remove one child from the passage of time if possible. Well, the problem with not discarding it is if we draw another ceremony card, which is likely, we have drawn so far 3 operations cards and 2 ceremony cards, so the odds favor it being a ceremony card. Then this would enact it once again. So for right now, we'll keep the card and we'll continue on. Now it says here, discard this card or do step 3. We would add an elder population counter to the passage of time box. Add this card to your hand. And then the blessing way is discard this card in lieu of making a die roll during battle, evasion, or at any time during an operation segment. The die roll is automatically a 4. Well, I think we're going to discard that card. We don't want to keep too many of those in our hand. So we will discard the ceremony card and we'll draw our next card, and we're hoping we don't get another ceremony. This time we've got, it is the historical card, Pueblo Revolt. So we follow the card instructions from top to bottom. It says return all cubes in recovery, rated cubes, and subjugation of New Mexico boxes to the raid pool. Then place this card face up along the top edge of the map. While in play, the following persistent effects apply. Number 1, only steps 2 and 4 of the enemy operations segment are executed. While in play, during step 2, +1 enemy action point. During step 4, all action points in enemy action point available box must be spent to execute subjugate instruction. If the number of APs spent exceeds the number of cubes in the raid pool, the excess APs spent have no effect. Number 2, ignore all enemy instruction counters while in play. Number 3, do not reset cubes while that card is in play. And finally, it says 8 victory point check or good medicine. That's our number 4 instruction. So that card is going to be placed in the cultural development and historical event cards area on the map. It's at the top of the map. It's a holding box. We'll place that up there, and then all 4 of those steps are going to be active while that card is around. So we need to conduct a victory point check at this time. Now we do have the option to use a operation called Good Medicine, and that allows us to skip a victory check if we choose, but it comes at quite a severe cost. The card, the Pueblo Revolt, is an 8 victory point victory check. So what we're supposed to do is subtract the victory point value of the historical event from the total victory point value of all territories with 1 or more families. So right now we've got 4 for Shiprock, 3 for San Juan Valley, and 2 for Monument Valley. So we have a total of 9 victory points. So if we take the 9 victory points, subtract the 8 from the card, that leaves us with 1. It says if the difference is a positive number, we add a military point. All right. The difference is a positive value, so we'll increase our military points up to 9. That's awesome. That's the maximum. Now, I did see an instruction on the board here. It says maximum military points during victory check segment. I'll have to find out what that means. Well, I couldn't find anything about that, but I'm assuming that after the calculations are done, that the maximum military points during a victory check segment would be 7. So I don't know if we're supposed to decrease that to 7 right now, or I don't know. We'll continue on. Step 2 is we're supposed to subtract the number of enemy morale points from the number of military points and place the military counter accordingly. Well, they have a total of 5 morale rather. So we would reduce the morale to 0 and then reduce our military points by 5. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're at 4. It says if the player has 0 military and 0 culture, the game ends and the player suffers major defeat. Step 4, increase military points by the number of man population counters in family boxes that do not belong to a family in the same territory as a fort. All right. Military points cannot be increased above 7 during this step, so that's where that happens. Well, none of our families are in areas with forts. Now, we have a man in A and B, but we don't have one in C. So we would be able to increase our military points by 2, 1 for the man in A and 1 for the man in B. So our military points can increase by 2, and that's our maximum level during the victory check segment. Okay. Okay, step 5, we're going to add 1 enemy morale point for each outpost counter that is in play. There are none. Step 6, we would increase our culture points by the number of women population counters in family boxes that do not belong to a family in the same territory as a fort. Culture points cannot be increased above 9. During this step, and if it is already greater than 9, reduce the number of culture points to 9. Okay, well, we have a total of 3 women in families that are not in areas with forts. So we can increase our culture up to its maximum from 7 up to 9. That's pretty good for us. Step 7, the player loses a culture point per fort in play. Well, there are no forts. That only happens during the American period. Step 8, unless resolving card number 45 or 50, the player may, not must, spend culture or military points to buy a cultural development card. The cost of such purchase is stated on the cultural development card. See section 9 and the rules for concerning cultural development. So we're able to purchase a cultural development card from those we have available to us. And I think I'm going to purchase this level 1 cunning card. The cost is 1 culture point. So we would reduce our culture from 9 down to 8. And the benefit says if player has 1 or more culture points determined in enemy operation during an enemy operation segment. Player may exhaust this card in order to force the enemy to skip an operation instruction slides to the right as though it was executed. No APs are spent. Enemy continues to spend APs as possible. Player may re-enable this card after undertaking a passage of time operation. So we're going to take that card. We'll add that to our horsemanship culture card. And step 9 is set player's AP to 0 and return all cubes in raided cubes and recovery boxes to the raid pool. So we have to unfortunately move our APs down to 0. There's no cubes in either of those boxes. And finally, step 10, we have to remove 1/2, rounded up, of all population counters in the passage of time box to the out of play box. The player chooses which to remove.
Well, we have 2 counters in there, so we're going to have to remove one of them. And I think we'll remove the woman counter, and we'll keep the child. The child is more flexible. And so that completes that Pueblo Revolt card. Now that card is going to remain at the top of the board there in the historical events area. And those conditions are going to be in place until the card is removed. So in essence, with the Pueblo Revolt, the Spanish are going to be undertaking those subjugate actions until we've got 3 red cubes in subjugation of New Mexico. Whenever a cube is added to that subjugation box, we consult subjugation of New Mexico 4.2.10, and that's in the trifold player's aid. When we get 3 cubes in there, it says, if in play, remove Pueblo Revolt from the game. Immediately flip over Spanish enemy instruction counters A, B, and F if in play, so that they show either the raid side if they don't already. And then the cubes would be reset. +1 enemy morale and +3 enemy AP during step 2 of enemy operations segments. Well, this video is getting a little long, so I think we're going to close it out here. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten into some of the more interesting parts of the game yet, and that primarily being the battles. When the Spanish start launching raids on our tribal lands from Santa Fe, that's when our families get to react to that. And we'll be using evasion and harassment tactics and possibly ambushes to stop the Spanish from their incursions into our area. We did manage to go through one of the historical cards. That's the Pueblo Revolt card. And I think what we'll do is, in the future, I'm going to do a full playthrough of this scenario. This is going to serve as an introduction for that. And I look forward to seeing you at the channel for my next video. In the meantime, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club signing off and wishing everyone a pleasant evening. Good night.